The toothbrush was blue yesterday. Now it's green. Same spot, same cup. But not mine, and definitely not hers. The blue one had frayed bristles. She always pressed too hard. I remember noticing that on Tuesday. She was brushing fast, pacing, talking about packing cubes and charger anxiety. Now it's Friday, and the toothbrush is green. I haven't moved. I'm still staring at the bathroom sink like it might confess something. Like maybe it'll say, "She brought someone here while you were at your brother's barbecue." It won't, of course, but something else will. My cat won't come out from under the bed. That's the second clue. He always greets her when she gets back from a trip, runs to the door, meows like he's singing. But not this time. This time, he's hiding. Tail puffed, eyes huge, like he saw something that shouldn't have happened in our kitchen. Like someone else was here, someone new, someone male. I haven't said anything yet. She's downstairs right now, humming, making tea. She walked in like nothing happened, like she didn't leave on Monday with a roller bag and excuses, like she didn't forget to send a single picture from her conference. I checked the hotel. She never checked in. I called her boss. The conference ended Wednesday, but she came back Friday with new earrings, a slight limp, and the smell of someone else's cologne behind her ears. She hugged me hard, too hard. People don't hug like that unless they're guilty or grieving. She whispered, "Missed you." And I smiled. Because what else do you do when your entire body's screaming and your throat's full of pins? You smile, and then you go upstairs to brush your teeth. And you see the green toothbrush. I'm not going to ask her. She'd lie. I know she'd lie because she already did, twice over text. Once when I asked how the hotel was, so cozy. And once when I asked if she needed a ride home. Flights delayed, I'll Uber. The Uber never came to the airport. It came from a residential neighborhood in Miller's Creek. I know, I paid a shady $14 for the data. And now she's here, brewing chamomile tea like she didn't spend 3 nights somewhere with a man who uses green toothbrushes and leaves tiny scratch marks on her hips. Yeah, I saw those too. Just before she changed into pajamas. There's a camera she doesn't know about. It's not in a creepy place, nothing weird, just overlooked. A small one I installed in the upstairs hallway during the burglary scare last year. It faces the guest room, and the guest bed's rumpled. That bed hasn't been touched since my cousin visited in March. Now it looks slept in. There are receipts in the trash, one from a liquor store 3 blocks from Miller's Creek, another from a boutique with a name I can't pronounce. And in her suitcase, still unzipped by the door, there's a receipt for a lunch. 2 entrees, 1 glass of white wine, 1 Manhattan. She hates whiskey. I don't know what I'll do yet, but the green toothbrush is still in the cup. And I'm still pretending to brush my teeth. Because the moment I go back downstairs, I'll have to decide, do I say something or do I wait until she makes the next move? The kettle clicked off with that soft metallic ping it always makes, and I swear the sound hit my nerves like a siren. I heard her pour the water, heard her open the cabinet, pause like she forgot which shelf held the honey, and then shuffle to the fridge instead. She's moving slowly, calmly, like nothing's wrong. Like she doesn't feel the air in this house hanging 50 pounds heavier than it did before she left. She doesn't know I haven't blinked in 2 full minutes. I'm still upstairs, still staring at that stupid green toothbrush. I could go down there and ask, just throw it all at her in one violent sentence. But no, that would let her control the tone, shape the story. I'm not ready for that yet. I walked to the laundry room instead. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe a scarf that didn't belong to her, or the scent of strange detergent. What I didn't expect was a sock, 1 sock, black, longer than the ones she wears, heavier fabric, definitely not mine. It was stuffed behind the dryer like it had fallen there accidentally, or been shoved out of sight. I picked it up like it might bite me. It was warm, still. That didn't make sense. The dryer hadn't been on. The washer was empty. So, unless she'd done a load of laundry before coming up to greet me with tea and a smile, someone else had. And that's when something broke open in my chest. I dropped the sock, opened the dryer. Inside, 2 neatly folded t-shirts, gray, both size L. One of them had a small logo on the collar, Silver Point Ridge. That's a boutique hotel. We stayed there 2 years ago for our anniversary. They gave us those shirts as a gift when we checked out. I never wore mine. She said it was too thin and gave it to Goodwill. I guess she liked it enough to keep his. I sat down on the cold tile floor, and stared at the machine like it might spin answers out of the lint trap. I felt like I was in someone else's house, someone else's life. Like I'd slipped into a bad dream, where the woman I loved had been replaced by a copycat with perfect makeup and a haunting smile. Downstairs, she was laughing at a podcast. I could hear the familiar voice of that wellness lady she always plays, the one who talks about inner peace and detoxifying grief. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood up. I needed something. Not closure. That's too clean a word. I needed evidence. Something undeniable. A way to trap her in her own story. So I walked into the guest room. The sheets were freshly made. Too freshly. I'd made the bed myself months ago, and it wasn't with lavender-scented linen spray. That was her touch. There was a single long hair on the pillow. Dark brown. Wavy. Sylvie's hair is straight and copper red. My stomach turned. Then I saw it, tucked just barely under the edge of the mattress. A parking ticket. Dated Wednesday, 2:43 p.m. Location, Miller's Creek. She had said she was in a panel session at that exact time, sent me a text complaining about how boring it was, but she was parked in a residential neighborhood 30 miles south. Either she learned to teleport, or she was lying from someone else's bed. I took the ticket, folded it, slid it into the back of my wallet, and just like that, I had what I needed. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. Not even when I went back downstairs and she handed me a mug with a fox on it and said, "This made me think of you, wild and loyal." I nodded, took a sip. The tea tasted like flowers and venom. She asked if I wanted to watch something. I said no, told her I had a headache. Went upstairs and laid on the bed we used to share. She didn't follow. She never used to leave me alone when I wasn't feeling well. And the silence? It didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the calm right before the bottom drops out of a plane. Saturday morning started like nothing happened. She made pancakes, humming some Fleetwood Mac tune, as if that parking ticket wasn't folded in my wallet like a loaded gun. She was cheerful. Too cheerful. Laughing at nothing, touching my arm more than usual, complimenting my new haircut, even though I hadn't seen a barber in 6 weeks. It was performance, subtle, but I could feel the cracks beneath the surface. Her energy was off, like she knew something might catch up to her soon, and she was racing against it. I told her I was heading to the hardware store, said I needed sandpaper and wood glue for the nightstand drawer that always jammed. She nodded, kissed my cheek, and told me to take my time. I did take my time, but not at the hardware store. I drove to Miller's Creek. It was about 40 minutes outside the city. A quiet suburb with old trees and iron mailbox posts, the kind of place people move when they want to feel insulated from reality. I turned onto the street listed on the parking ticket, Hollow Bridge Lane. Most of the houses looked lived in, family-friendly. But one, the last one on the right, had an overgrown lawn and a wind chime that made a hollow, eerie sound, even though the air was still. The same tan sedan from the Uber log was parked out front. I stayed in my car for 20 minutes, pretending to scroll through my phone, but the longer I sat there, the more my heart refused to slow down. I kept picturing her on the other side of that door, laughing, undressing, lying about who she was with and what she believed in. I imagined him, the man with the green toothbrush and the cologne that made my cat hide under the bed. Then the front door opened. A man stepped out, tall, maybe early 40s, dark hair cut short, slight limp in his right leg. He was wearing a red jacket. That wouldn't have mattered except for one thing. It was the same red jacket I saw hanging behind Sylvie in a blurry selfie she sent me from the airport hotel. She told me it was her coworker's coat, said they shared a shuttle and it was raining. But this wasn't a coworker. This wasn't some passing stranger. This man walked like he lived there, like he'd slept well, like he didn't care who saw him. He walked to the mailbox, pulled out a stack of envelopes, glanced once in my direction, then disappeared back inside. I don't think he recognized me, or maybe he did and just didn't care. I drove away with shaking hands. I didn't go home. I sat in a grocery store parking lot for an hour with the radio on, but the volume down. I couldn't even bring myself to cry, not yet. It felt like the tears were locked somewhere in my spine. All I could do was stare at the people walking by. Couples, parents with kids, a guy pushing a cart full of nothing but paper towels, and wonder how many of them were being lied to right now. When I finally made it home, she was sitting on the couch in yoga pants, watching some crime docuseries like nothing had happened. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You were gone forever." Did you get the glue? I told her they were out, that I went to 2 different stores, that traffic was hell. She laughed and said, "This city is broken." I mumbled something and excused myself to the bathroom. I didn't need the bathroom, I just needed to breathe. And then I noticed something else. In the trash bin, half buried under tissues and floss picks, was a receipt from a local jeweler, dated 2 days ago. It listed one item, sterling silver bracelet with custom engraving. To S, still ours. We don't wear jewelry. I don't know who ours is, but it's not us. It hasn't been for a long time. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I laid there listening to her breathe, slow and even, like someone who had no ghosts in her closet. Or maybe just someone used to sleeping beside them. I stared at the ceiling until the shadows moved across the room and morning started to pull itself through the curtains. She rolled over once, brushed my arm with hers, whispered something about pancakes again. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My tongue felt like it didn't belong to my mouth. I waited until she left for a grocery run, said she needed oat milk and fresh basil. I watched her walk down the driveway, keys swinging in her hand, like nothing was off, like her entire marriage wasn't bleeding under the surface. As soon as the car pulled out, I ran to the trash can. The receipt was still there. I pulled it out carefully, smoothed it flat. The address of the jeweler was only 4 blocks away. One of those hip little boutique shops with warm lighting and Instagrammable signage. I grabbed my hoodie, shoved the receipt in my pocket, and walked out the door like I was headed to war. The woman at the counter was maybe 25, overly cheerful. She greeted me with that rehearsed customer service smile that cracked a little when I handed her the receipt and asked, quietly, if the bracelet had been picked up yet. She hesitated. Her eyes dropped to the name at the top, then to me. "Are you Mr. Hartwell?" No, I wasn't. But I nodded anyway. She asked for ID, and I panicked. I pulled out my wallet, pretending to fumble through cards I knew wouldn't match. "Sorry," I said. "I think I left it in the car. I really need the bracelet. It's a surprise." Her hesitation stretched into silence. She tapped the keyboard. Then she gave me a strange look. Not suspicious, more like pity. She stepped into the back room without a word. When she returned, she wasn't alone. An older woman came out, heavy jewelry, serious eyes. She asked my name again. I gave her a different one. Not Hartwell, not mine either. Just something I said without thinking. Jonah. Jonah Blake. She looked me up and down. Then she sighed, walked behind the counter, and pulled out a small black velvet box. "This was just dropped off for delivery," she said slowly. "He said you'd understand." That stopped me cold. She handed me the box. No charge, no signature, just a silent transfer of something I wasn't supposed to see. I walked out with it, clutched in my hand like it might explode. I didn't open it until I was 2 blocks away. Inside was a silver bracelet, delicate, expensive looking, polished so clean I could see the tremble in my reflection. The engraving read, "To S, still ours, always." But it wasn't the message that made me sit down on the curb like someone had kicked me in the chest. It was the handwriting, because I recognized it, and it wasn't hers. This wasn't just some casual affair. This was old, intimate, familiar. The handwriting belonged to someone I hadn't seen in nearly a decade, a name I'd erased, someone who, until now, I thought was gone. Miles Hartwell, my ex-best friend. The last time I saw him, we were drunk at my bachelor party, and he whispered something in Sylvie's ear that made her blush. I laughed it off. Later, he disappeared without a trace. Deleted socials, changed numbers, left town after a failed startup. Apparently, he didn't stay gone. Apparently, he found his way back. To her. I don't remember getting home. I know I walked. I know my shoes were soaked because it had started raining and I didn't notice. I know my hands hurt from how hard I'd been clenching them. And I know that when I walked through the door, Sylvie was already back, standing in the kitchen with grocery bags half unpacked, talking on speakerphone to someone who said, "Yeah, babe," too casually. She saw me and flinched, just slightly. Enough. I didn't say a word. I walked past her, went into the bathroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, took the bracelet out again and held it in my lap. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated, a history. They knew I'd find out eventually, and they were daring me to. The idea came to me at 3:12 a.m. I was lying awake again, staring at the corner of the ceiling like it might split open and swallow me whole. Sylvie was asleep beside me, or pretending to be. I could hear the faint rhythmic hum of her breath, but it felt staged, too perfect. She hadn't touched me all day, hadn't asked me about the weather or my mood, or why I looked like I'd aged 10 years since breakfast. She just floated around the house like a ghost in someone else's routine. That's when I decided I wasn't going to let this rot from the inside out anymore. I needed to see him, face to face. I needed to look Miles Hartwell in the eye and ask him how long he'd been quietly gutting my life like a fish while pretending he was gone. It wasn't about getting revenge, not yet. I didn't even know what justice would look like. But I knew that if I didn't do something, this thing would eat me alive, and I was tired of bleeding in silence. I didn't have his number, of course, but he'd left a breadcrumb. The bracelet, the store, that stupid engraving. It meant something. Still ours. Like he expected me to read it, like he wanted me to. It wasn't a gift, it was a signature, a message written in silver. He was telling me he was back, that he was bold enough to mark her again, like some wolf pissing around a tree he didn't even plant. So I went back to the boutique the next day. This time, I wore different clothes. Black hoodie, hat low, sunglasses even though it was overcast. I didn't want to be recognized, but the woman behind the counter clocked me instantly. I didn't even have to speak. She waved me over and slid a folded piece of paper across the glass like we were in some kind of spy movie. It was a note, brief, blocky handwriting. You're not crazy. 8 o'clock, tomorrow, Westlot Bay, Dort, no signature, no address. Just that. I didn't sleep again that night. The fear of what I might learn was keeping my chest in a vice. Every time Sylvie looked at me, I wondered if she knew, if she was in on it, if they were laughing behind my back, if this was some elaborate joke that got out of hand, or if this was always the plan. Me, the placeholder, me, the predictable husband who stacked the dishwasher wrong and asked too many questions. By the time 7:50 rolled around the next evening, my hands were sweating through the wheel. The Westlot was a half-abandoned parking structure near the waterfront. Bay 4 was down on the second level, dim and cracked with moss growing in the corners. It was the kind of place people went to disappear, or get disappeared. He was already there, leaning against the hood of a silver car, arms folded, that same red jacket on. Older now, thinner, more angular. But it was him. His face still had that quiet smirk, like he was always thinking 5 steps ahead of everyone in the room. I parked, got out, walked slowly. He didn't flinch. "Hey, Reuben," he said. I didn't answer right away, just stared. He nodded toward the passenger side of his car. "You want to sit? Or are we doing this standing up?" I laughed once, just once, because it was so stupid, so casual, like we were grabbing a beer, like he hadn't vanished after my wedding and reappeared years later, sleeping with my wife and engraving it in precious metal. "I should punch you," I said. He shrugged. "You should." I didn't. Instead, I asked the question that had been burning a hole in my ribs since the moment I saw that bracelet. "How long?" He looked up at the concrete ceiling, then down at the gravel between us. "I don't know. Depends how you count." "Try years. That's how time works." He smirked again, that same smug, glassy look that always made me want to break something in college. But then his expression changed, hardened, like he'd finally decided to stop playing. 2.5 years. I couldn't breathe. I actually felt my knees weaken. "Started with a letter," he went on. "I was in New Mexico thinking about the past, regretting stuff. I wrote her, didn't think she'd answer. I didn't want the details. I really didn't, but part of me needed every inch of the wound." "Why her?" I asked. "Out of everyone you could have wrecked, why the one person you knew would destroy me?" His answer was instant, no hesitation. "Because she never loved you the way she pretended." That hit harder than any fist could have. He went on, softer now. "I didn't come to break your life. I came because I knew she was still pretending, and I thought you deserved the truth, even if it's ugly." I don't remember leaving. I don't remember what I said, or if I said anything at all. All I know is I ended up in my car, keys in my hand, the bracelet burning a hole in my jacket pocket. I stayed parked there for another 20 minutes, trying to decide whether I was more ashamed that he was right, or more furious that I'd let him be. When I got home that night, the house smelled like vanilla candles. Not just one, 3 of them, all lit in different corners of the living room, like she was trying to bless a scene she knew was cursed. She was on the couch, barefoot, reading a book she always pretended to love, but never got past page 50. Her phone was face down on the armrest, a wine glass half full on the coffee table. She looked up like nothing had changed, like I hadn't just seen the man who used to be my best friend tell me my wife had been living a second life for 2.5 years. "You okay?" she asked, soft voice, tilting her head, her version of concern. I didn't answer. She watched me cross the room. I didn't sit. I just stood there, staring at her like she might morph into someone else if I blinked too slowly. My heart was thudding so loud, I was sure she could hear it from the couch. "Where did you go today?" I asked. She blinked once, twice. "Store, I told you. I needed—" "No, not that. I mean 2 years ago. Where did you go when I thought you were in therapy or yoga or having dinner with your cousin, who doesn't even live in the state anymore?" She didn't move. The candlelight flickered against her cheekbone, like it was trying to reveal something her face was still hiding. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Why ask me now?" That was when I realized she knew. She knew the day had come. She'd been bracing for it. Maybe not tonight, maybe not this week, but at some point, she knew I'd figure it out. And now that I had, she wasn't going to lie. She wasn't going to cry or beg or invent some half-plausible explanation that might buy her another week. Instead, she stood up. No tears, no trembling. She walked past me, slow and steady, like she was floating, into the hallway. I followed, heart in my throat. She opened the hallway closet, reached for the top shelf, and pulled down a shoebox. Not hidden, not taped shut. Just a plain black shoebox with a tiny sticker on the lid that read, "Old tax stuff." She handed it to me and stepped back. "Whatever you think is in there," she said, "you're probably right." I didn't open it right away. My fingers shook. My mouth was dry. My vision blurred around the edges like I was about to pass out. She turned and went back to the couch, sat down again, and stared at her wine glass like it might start speaking. I opened the box. Inside were photos. Dozens. Maybe more. Her and Miles. Some old, hotel rooms, blurry parking lots, restaurant tables with the edges of plates half cropped. Some newer. There was one of them sitting on our back porch while I was at work. My hammock in the background. My cat curled up at their feet. Letters too. Folded scented pages in handwriting I didn't recognize at first. Then did. His, Miles. His stupid overconfident loops and the way he dotted every I with a tiny line instead of a dot. Like he wanted to feel more poetic than he really was. There was a flash drive at the bottom. I didn't ask what was on it. I already knew I wouldn't be able to unsee it. And in the very last layer, tucked beneath everything else, was a sheet of paper. One sentence written in Sylvie's handwriting. "I would have chosen you if I could have loved you the way you deserved." That was it. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Please forgive me." Just a quiet admission that even in her betrayal, she still saw herself as the one who had suffered. I stood there for God knows how long. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had cut my body in half and left the top half upright out of spite. When I finally looked at her, she wasn't crying. She wasn't apologizing. She just stared at the wine glass, then said, "If you want me to leave, say it. Or, if you want to go, I won't stop you." That sentence shattered me more than anything else. Because she wasn't trying to fix it. She wasn't fighting for us. Because there was no us left to fight for. Just silence, a box of evidence, and a woman who used to love me. I didn't speak to her for 2 days, not because I was angry. I mean, of course I was angry. But not in the way people get angry when they're wronged. This wasn't screaming through the hallways kind of rage. This was the kind that curdles beneath your ribs, the quiet kind. The kind that erodes you slowly while you smile at neighbors and microwave leftovers. I stayed in the guest room. She didn't ask me to leave the house. I didn't ask her why she hadn't left it yet. I guess we were both waiting for someone to move first, for the silence to pick sides. The box was still in my closet. I didn't touch it again. Just knowing it existed made my skin itch. I couldn't sleep with it in the room, so I buried it under an old winter coat and shoved it behind a stack of untouched tax files. And still, I felt it there, pulsing like a wound behind drywall. She continued with her routine like nothing had shifted. Tea in the morning, light yoga, 2 client calls. I watched her from the hallway the way you might watch a stranger through a train window, close enough to recognize, too far to reach. Then, on Sunday morning, something strange happened. I told her I was going to take a walk. It wasn't a lie, I needed air, but I didn't actually leave the property. I circled around through the back fence, came in through the garage, and ended up crouched behind the pantry door like some half-mad animal. I wasn't proud of it, but I wasn't ready to ask her the last question. I needed her to answer it without knowing I was listening. And somehow, I got what I wanted. She was on the phone. Her voice was low, quiet enough that I had to strain, which made my heart beat harder than it already was. She was pacing the living room barefoot, her heel tapping the rug every third step like a metronome. No, I didn't tell him. He doesn't know about that part. Pause. No, Miles, listen to me. He knows the basics, okay? He saw the bracelet. He figured it out, but I didn't say anything about the cabin or the year before Reuben and I even got engaged. I stopped breathing. The year before we got engaged, she had been working at a nonprofit, volunteering on weekends, mentoring high school girls. At least that's what she said. I was working late hours, starting my own business. I was broke, exhausted, and trying to build a future for both of us. And all that time, she kept talking. Don't be dramatic. You're not the villain. He wasn't ever meant to know, Miles. We were supposed to end it. You were supposed to disappear. Another long silence. Then, finally, the sentence that burned into my spine and sat there like an infection. If he hadn't started digging, we could have kept everything exactly the way it was. That was the moment I stopped being heartbroken. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was a variable, an obstacle, a background character in a story they'd been scripting for years. I wasn't supposed to know. I was supposed to stay asleep in the life they'd built for me. The faithful husband, the man with no questions, the fool they could keep around until it became inconvenient. I backed away from the pantry slowly, quietly. My feet felt like they weren't touching the ground. I left the garage, walked to the end of the street, sat on the curb beneath the power lines, and stared at the cracks in the pavement until the sun shifted across the sky. And then, for the first time in a long time, I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of grief, out of clarity. Because the final part of this story, the part she never expected, wasn't about confrontation. It was about making sure they both realized something neither of them had prepared for. I was done playing a role in their story. I was writing the ending myself now. I didn't tell her I was leaving, not because I wanted to punish her, not because I wanted her to feel the weight of absence the way she'd made me feel mine, but because silence was finally mine to use. And this time, it was freedom, not fear. The morning I walked out, the sun was just starting to fill the kitchen. The same kitchen where she used to bake cinnamon rolls on Sundays and kiss me behind the fridge door like we were still 25. The same kitchen where she whispered lies into her phone while I stood 6 feet away, unseen. I left her a letter on the counter, just 4 lines. No rage, no begging, no moral high ground, just the truth. I loved you more than you ever knew how to receive. I waited for the version of you that never came. I deserved more, and I'm going to find it. Don't call. I packed a single bag, took the cat, left everything else. The house, the couch, the joint bank account. I didn't want any of it. I didn't want pieces of a life built on half-truths and rerouted affections. I wanted space, stillness, a version of myself I hadn't been allowed to meet yet. I stayed with my sister for a while. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a spare key and said, "About time." I told her bits and pieces over coffee and midnight cereal. I didn't cry, not even once. I thought I would, but it turns out grief doesn't always show up in tears. Sometimes it just feels like sleep that finally comes without shame. And then, slowly, things got better. I started running again, joined a writing group. I made actual friends, the kind that didn't see me as a sidekick or a safety net. I spent an afternoon at a lake I hadn't visited since college, barefoot on the dock. And for the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel haunted. One day, while browsing a bookstore I used to walk past but never entered, I met someone. Her name's Annika. She teaches literature at a high school and talks with her hands like she's afraid her words might fall apart if she doesn't hold them in the air. We talked about poetry for an hour before I even realized I was smiling. I haven't told her about Sylvie yet. I probably will someday. But not because I need her to fix me, because I'm no longer bleeding. I'm rebuilding. And people deserve the truth. The real kind, not the version that fits the moment kind. I don't know where Sylvie is now. Last I heard, she moved to Portland. Poetic, right? I didn't track her down, didn't follow her socials, didn't answer the letter she mailed me 6 months later, with no return address and a single sentence. You were always kinder than I earned. Maybe, maybe not, but I was finally kind to myself. That's what mattered. And that's how it ends. Not with fire, not with revenge, not even with closure from her lips, but with peace. The kind you don't get handed, the kind you walk toward with quiet feet and a new life in your hands.